Hey YouTube, this is Studio. I'm here to do a long since due video that somebody asked me to do for them a while ago, and hopefully it might be a subject that some of my users might be interested in, other than the person who asked me to do it, or that you might use in the same way that this person told me that they were going to use it, and they really just wanted me to talk about my I guess my education path, I guess I should say, or like the journey, my education journey, and talk about how that went for me and, what I did to prepare to get to college, blah, blah, blah. So, what I got from this user is that I'm pretty sure it's he, sorry, it was a really long time ago when we talked, and I apologize for the lateness of this video, but he wanted to show his daughter, maybe if coming from somebody else, I mean, he stresses, education, blah, 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 but maybe seeing it coming from somebody else who feels that education is just as important as he does, or, whatever, might help to also motivate his daughter, his children. So, I guess we'll just start at the basics. I made a video about education. Sorry, my iPod. A while ago, and how I was in the Project Heart classes because I was a part of that program. I was one of the Project Heart tutors, and how it's sad to see how few people how many people don't care about education. These are the kids who are fine with just working at McDonald's and don't care to go to school to become a manager, but rather work at McDonald's for years and years and years, and then finally maybe they'll get promoted. These type of kids who do that, or if worse comes to worse, they might just be selling drugs or whatever, for their money, and they stay at home, don't move out for a really long time. These are the people who live in their same city all their life, their same neighborhood all their life. So I've seen some terrible things when it comes to education, and the worst part of that is the fact that most of the time those kids, unless they're rebelling against their parents, but if they really truly don't care about education at all, it's because their parents haven't been stressing it, or whoever their guardians are. They might be like, hey, you need to go to class, but maybe they don't put in that extra effort where they're like, did you do your homework, how was your day, blah blah blah. Like, their parents might not have gotten the education that they needed to get, or they might not want to have gotten the education. They might regret not getting it. They might not care that they don't get it. But either way, it's probably a parent who the kid sees, hey, you didn't have an education, so why do I need to? Or they say, you didn't have an education, so I don't see why I have to. So it's not stressed that much in their home life. And I think that's the first step to really motivating your kid, because sometimes you can try as hard as you want to. If you don't want your child like getting sexually active early, or you want them to wait or something, you have no idea. You could be one of the greatest parents in the world in your books, and in a lot of other people's books, and they still go against that, because even though it's your kid, they're still their own person, so they're still going to make their choice of what they want to do. That's like, when I think about my kids, I think about how am I going to get them not to fear me, but more to respect me enough to really take in my opinion and really consider it, and also respect me enough so that, even though they want to do something really badly, they know that if I knew that they were doing that, I would be like, wow, you really did that. That hurts my feelings. I'm kind of ashamed of you. And that is enough to keep them from doing it, or to keep them motivated to keep doing the right thing rather than the wrong thing. So that's how I feel my parents brought me up. It wasn't like, oh, I need to get good grades or else I'm get some whippings from both of them, for 10 minutes straight. I know sometimes I got fussed at if I got bad grades, but eventually, like, it just started coming to me. And I remember in fifth grade math, I got yelled at for a really long time. From a bad grade on math, and I don't necessarily agree with the way I was treated after that test, and I don't know if it was the yelling or my other parent being like, hey, you need to chill out with all the yelling at her, or what. But after that test, I probably am making this up because I've told this story a number of times, but when you have a memory that old, like, you're like, oh, I swear this is what happened, but you can involuntarily change your memories by accident, and you'll be like, I swear this is what happened, but you have changed it 8 years ago, so you won't remember, that you edited it. But what I believe really did happen was, I think that grade was like a 70, and literally from that grade on, every test I took went from a 70 to 80 to 90 to 100, and then after I got that 100, it was all A's from there. So now I'm great at math. I made a 5 on my calculus AP exam. I'm really good at math. I don't think it's not my favorite subject. I don't even hardly enjoy it, but I'm just good at it. So, you know, just somehow you need to be able to instill that education is important. Let your kids remember how much people had to fight to get their education, and let them know that it's a blessing. They need to appreciate it. It's something that can be taken away. Getting into college isn't just something that you need to do. It's something that some people want to do and they can't because of money, because they didn't do well enough in school or whatever, and they actually really want to go to that next level, and now they can't. And I feel like a lot of the times, if they wanted to go to the next level that badly, then they'll have the grades to do it. But the money wise, not everybody can get a scholarship, and that's what holds some people back. So with my education, like I said, started at an early age, that I appreciated education. I wasn't one of those kids who's just like, school's stupid. Like, I loved coming to school to see my friends, first of all, so that helped. And yeah, I was this dumb kid. I had a whole bunch of girlfriends, and I mean, we were just reminiscing this weekend, reading old notes, and we had beef. We fought amongst our group. Not like fist fight, but like, oh, that girl's blah blah blah, and she's blah blah. Little stupid stuff like that. But even then, like, I talked smack to teachers, didn't have good relationships with some of my teachers, and sometimes it was the teacher was actually a jerk, and sometimes it was just me being a dumb kid, in school. So even though I acted up sometimes, I was one of the better students at my school, and I still very much appreciate my work. I didn't ever rebel and say, oh, I hate this teacher, I'm not going to do my work. I never did that, because I knew exactly when I got home what that meant. So from the start, you got to know that you should be keeping up your grades and stuff. And really, I try to aim for A's and B's, especially A's in high school. Now that I'm in college, I'm like, is a B a good thing or a bad thing? And it's hard to get an A. Or at least for me it is. But like, I'm ashamed of some of my grades, and I'm like, I wish I could do better, because in high school I was beasting it, and now I'm in college and it's like, eh. So you know, one thing about college is, a lot of the times people are like, "Oh, you're applying," and you're like, "Oh, I took these AP classes, I got A's in all of them, I got passed all my AP exams, blah blah blah." But there are hundreds and hundreds of kids like that in the United States, and obviously there's a big difference if you apply to Harvard, which is an Ivy League, compared to if you apply to somewhere like MIT, which isn't the Ivy League, but it's still a really good school, compared to a not a Nash community, sorry, that's the community college near closest to me, but a community college, and some community colleges aren't that bad. I mean, obviously that's a totally different thing if you go to community college, but you know, Nash Community College, you literally all you had to do is fill out the application, like, where do you live, blah blah blah, and they're like, okay, you're in. Like, that's not gonna be competitive school at all. Whereas Harvard, I wish you would just try and fill out the application and they just be like, cool. That's never gonna happen unless, like, I don't know, unless everybody is like really dumb, or like everybody's so smart that it's just like first come first serve. But you gotta know that it's true that everybody else who you're going to school with had all A's in their class for the most part, unless it's one of those schools where it's like athletes get a little bit more, leniency or something. But everybody is basically doing the same thing that you're doing. So that's why they stress, play sports, do clubs, do volunteer work, all that stuff. And I did all that stuff. I was in clubs, I did volunteer work. Some of my clubs required me to do volunteer work, so that was nice. And I did sports. And it's a lot better to, be in history club for 4 years rather than every single year be like history club, drama club, writing club, reading club, like, and change them and not be consistent. Because if you stay in history club all 4 years, that's how you become just a member to being the vice president to being the president, and you have a lot of experience to share. Now, if you want to be in history, drama, reading, and writing all 4 years all together, that's awesome too. But don't like just skip around. And also don't be like, oh, freshman year, I can chill, and then senior year, try and be like, oh, I was in like 10 clubs senior year. Because nobody cares because they know that you just try to throw all that crap in. So, like, it really starts when you get to high school, and then people are like, oh, it especially starts 11th grade, blah, blah, blah. But it depends on what AP class you have, because some people were taking AP classes in ninth grade. I was not. So, it depending on where you want to go, but you should always shoot for the highest, because even if you're like, I don't want to go to Harvard, where I applied there, but I'm like 80% sure that even if I had gone in, I would not have gone. Maybe 90% sure. I just no, too many uppity folks, but it's still nice to know that you can apply to Princeton and get an interview with Princeton. Like, that happened with me. I got an interview with that school. It's still nice to know that if you shoot to be higher, you can go to UNC, you can go to community college, you can go to University of Connecticut, you can go to Pomona. You have a lot of options. It's not just like, oh, I didn't do so well, I had to go to mediocre schools. Or even if you don't want to go to those big, huge, UPenn, any Ivy League school, you can go to the next level right underneath that, because you had the grades, the ability to go to Ivy League. You just don't want to. So always shoot for the best and push yourself, because, they'll really appreciate that. And even if you're afraid and you're like, oh, I might fail this, don't do that, because you have teachers, and those teachers who are teaching the harder classes know that you care more. So really, really get with your guidance counselor, get with your teachers, get with your classmates to really push yourself and do the best you can. If you feel like you can't handle that workload, it's a lot better to get a A in a regular academics class than it is to fail a AP class. They'll be like, appreciate the effort, but you still failed, which is bad. So, find your own comfort level, but at the same time, do not doubt yourself. And if anything, if you really do and you're afraid, then go in and talk to your principal or whatever. Say, can I try this class out for a week? And if it doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. Always talk to people and see what your options are. But try and shoot for the grades and don't doubt yourself, because that's when you're going to start effing up. Because you might be like, oh, this is going to be some hard crap, and then you'll be surprised. Even if you don't pass the AP exam, you can still get an A or B in the class, which, still counts. It's still a good thing. So what I did was I took as many honors classes as I could, and then when I got to AP classes, I took the AP classes. I did not take online AP classes. I was like, I'm not effing with that, and it was just stupid. Like, people did it just to get their GPA up, and I'm not going to waste my time on a computer AP class that, I'm not going to learn anything, and I can turn in my work like 3 months late and they'll be like, oh, it's fine. I'm not going to do something that's just for my ego. It's stupid and it didn't really get anything. But if you have a good computer class, or if you're like, I really want to take this, then go ahead and do it. It wasn't my preference. So I didn't do that. But I took AP US History, AP English in 11th grade, the other AP English, and AP Calc in my senior year. And then I did Key Club. I did Project Heart, which only was senior year, so that's why I only did it 1 year. But that allowed me to have a class, which was easy A's. It allowed me to see education in different views, so it gave me things to write about or to talk to people about, when I had an interview. And it also allowed me to do a whole bunch of volunteer work. I played volleyball most all of high school, ran track half of high school, played softball 1 year in high school, and played basketball for as much as I can. Also, transferring schools really messed me up in like volleyball and basketball, but I was able to run track and do the field events too. So I was consistent with my sports. It was always volleyball and basketball as long as I could. If I was not playing, it honestly was the coach's choice, not mine. Like, literally. So I did that, and really what people want you to do is, obviously you need to have the good grades, blah blah blah, and try and have a good rank and GPA, whatever, try and, if you're taking AP class, you should have a 4 point something, so just show the people that you're willing to take the harder classes and that you can actually keep up with other people in the harder classes. You're not the one getting the D, you're people getting the A and the B in class. So really try hard with your academics, but also do the extracurricular activities, because then they know that you can juggle, one, And two, when you have all those other experiences, you have stuff to talk about. Your whole life isn't based around a freaking book. You can say, oh, well, I really, really know that I can take on a lot of stuff because right when our AP calculus was happening, we got made it to the championship in or I was in the finals, like running championship in track, and I had to focus on studying on the bus right into the event, and then getting my mind right to go run my 200-meter race, and you can just tell stories like that. And that's what gets people interested. And when you have the volunteer experience, you say, a life changing experience was when I went to the soup kitchen for a holiday because my family, isn't together anymore. So we don't really have a huge dinner on Easter holiday, So I went there to serve food, and it really touched my heart because blah blah blah. Blah. And it's bad that I can just say this stuff and this never happened to me because I did not run the 200-meter, and I haven't been to the soup kitchen forever. I don't even know if I wanted to go, but I don't know if our soup kitchen's still open. So it's bad that I can just BS these stories, but like that stuff happens to people. And I'm sure that if you did go to Easter and saw those people struggling and saw, the smile, hopefully some of them were happy when they got warm food, even if it's like all canned food. It's something to see people who have been struggling and then finally, they get some little bit of hope. I'm sure that would lift your heart. So, stuff like that. And it doesn't even have to be that traumatic. It could be like, oh, I volunteered at the library and read books to kids, and it was just nice to see them running around and smiling. It makes me happy to make other people happy. Like simple stuff, but just something where, if you're getting an interview with somebody else and they say, so tell me about your experiences with Key Club, you can be like, oh, well, it was nice. We did a whole bunch of different type of activities to raise money, to do nice things for the teachers at the school. You need to have stuff to talk about because when they say, what's your extracurricular activities, you can't just be like going to the movies in the mall with my friends. Like they're gonna be like, okay, anything else? I and you need to do stuff that's actually documented and things like that. And rather than just being like, oh, my hobbies are like reading, unless like I don't know, unless you're like I don't know if they have like intense reading stuff, but if you're just like, oh, I love curling up on the sofa with a book, they're gonna be like, that's nice, but I don't really care. I mean, it's a good quality to have, definitely, rather than being like, oh, I just watch TV all the time and like get on Facebook. Even if you have a blog, you can use the internet to your advantage. You can be like, well, I've had this YouTube video blog, or I keep a Tumblr where I take my own photography. Stuff like that. That's very interesting, and it shows that you're different and that you have a hobby, you have a passion that you're dedicated to. It also allows you, when you're looking for scholarships, to say, oh, well, I volunteered this amount of hours, look for scholarships for volunteering. I love photography. Look for scholarships where you can maybe submit your photography. The winner gets such amount of money. Stuff like that. Or if you're just like competing for some type of scholarship, that's another essay you have to write. That's some more stuff about you that you can talk about. So it's really the basics. If you have a lot of people come to your school talking to you about college, or have been on like college tours. I know I did a lot of activities where people would talk to me about, hey, here, let's talk about applying to college, blah blah blah. They really stress that, and it's sometimes it's too bad because they tell you this in 11th and 12th grade when, like I said, if you haven't been doing extracurricular activities and they're just telling you that in 12th grade, and then you're like, shit, maybe I can join the cheerleading club or the cheerleading team. Like that's not the that's not the best thing, because then you'll just have that one thing up there, and they'll be like, what made you join it? And you'll be like, I thought I had to get into school. So really really try and be all around, and be rounded, have some interesting things going on. And even me being in Key Club and playing all those sports and stuff, you'll be surprised when you get to school because people will be like, oh yeah, I did all your stuff, and I'm like an awesome drawer and like a really talented in painting. people do all your stuff times five. Oh yeah, I played sports stuff, but I really loved being an actor and being in ballets and stuff. And you'll just be like, so insignificant. Like I didn't do shit with my life. Like I went and did my 300 hours of volunteer work, but who cares? I had to do that, and they gave me money for that. And you're just like, damn, I don't feel talented at all compared to these other people, but still know that you still did stuff. Like you weren't, do something that'll make you feel special. And it doesn't matter if somebody's like, oh, I did that too, times like 50. If that's the one thing that you did, but that's what you did every other second other than when you were working on your books and stuff, then there's nothing to be ashamed about, because you know that you love doing that, and like you have a passion for it, you have a talent for it. So don't feel nervous or belittled by other people. And also, if you do go to college and everybody's like, oh, I did this and I did this, be like, well, I don't care if I feel like I didn't do as much as these people, because I'm at the same school that they're at, aren't I? So what's up? Like, you're not that special because we both got in. So just keep that in mind, and just remember that, like, the schools like to have interesting people, unless of course you are got the hookup with like the admissions office, and then you don't really do anything. But try and be fair, because some people really deserve to get in, and if you don't, but just work hard to do well at school, so that the better you do in high school, the better you'll do in college anyways, because college gets hard. And if you're ready for all that AP work and stuff, it won't be as bad when you get to school. You'll have a lot of practice writing and all that stuff. um so everything you do beforehand is just preparation for the next step. And when you get to school, continue that. I sometimes comment in these videos that I play rugby, and that's something that I really love to do. I'm actually going to be the captain next year. I'm only a sophomore. And it's a little different because rugby has 2 seasons. So one season we could have such and such on the team, and then the next season we have like two people off the team, three other people on. So it changes all the time. So it's like technically I'm a junior when it comes to rugby, but in my year I'm just a sophomore. And by the second season, I was loving it so much, was doing so much to be a part of it, that people were like, "You're a freshman?" And they were like, "Why does she speak so much during practice and have so many opinions?" And the coach is like, "Hey, can you give me an example of how to do this? Because I know what's going on and I care about it." Like, I've always been a competitor and I love sports. So really find something. If you go to a liberal arts school, you can have crazy classes all the way from philosophy to drawing to painting to freaking aerobics classes. Do something that you really care about. And even if you're like, I don't think I'm good enough to do basketball, screw that, do intramural. I tried to start my own intramural basketball team. I thought that was going to look good, when I talked to people. Sadly, people are very not dependent, so that didn't work out. But maybe next year. Actually, I probably won't do anything next year because I'll be hopefully doing conditioning for rugby in the gym. So, but find something that you love that's not just basketball. I mean, not basketball, but not just doing your work. Obviously, do your work. But you're going to be doing your work and partying. So if you can take time out of the day to party, then you can take time out of the day to, volunteer, do a sport, try and do both. Because the next step is graduate school or professional school, medical school. That might be your next step. And you got to impress them all over again. And I know it freaking sucks. I'm like, when will this end? And I'm going to be a doctor, and it's going to be so hard because it's going to be that. And then I had to impress people in high school so that I could get to college. I need to impress people in college so that I can get to medical school. And then I'll have to impress people in freaking medical school to get into my residency. Then I had to impress people in the residency to get a freaking actual job. So, it never stops. It never stops. And for some people, you might be able to get the job, and then you're like, have to impress people in job to get a promotion. Have to impress people in this first promotion to get the next one. And then finally, I'll be the CEO after 50,000 years, of working hard and sweating. So, keep your head up and keep working hard, and just care about your future, because that's always a good motivator. Know that you want to, like me, I'm set. I'm basically know what I'm going to do. If it changes, I'm going to be like, ooh. But some people don't. Some people have no idea what they're going to do in school. But know that you want to do something. You don't want to be out on the street and you don't want to have some basic job. You want to get a career. You want to do something great with your life. So just remember that as your motivator, you know. And keep your head up. Make some good friends. Have a good time. And just do anything that you love that'll make you passionate. Don't do stuff that you hate just because you feel like you have to. That's another thing. Don't be like, oh, I guess I have to be in this club. Do something that you actually enjoy, so then that it's easier for you to stick to it, you know? So, that's all my advice. Those are all my stories I have for my education path. And I hope those were helpful. Um, and I wish anybody who watches this video or shares this video or whatever, sees this video, I hope that you have the inspiration to do great things in your life, and I hope that that all works out for you. Whatever step you're gonna take, from an Ivy League to community college to going into a job, you know, picking up your parents' family business, whatever. You know, if you're gonna go be a chef, that's awesome. Hope you get a restaurant. Leave a comment on my video. I'll come visit maybe one of these years after I, 8 years from now when I'm in medical school or whatever. So I wish you guys all luck. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.